Hello, welcome back to another episode of The Scoop today. I learned some interesting information. I don't know if you had heard last month. So this is May of 2025. In April of 2025, there was a judge in Milwaukee County, and she had an illegal immigrant in her courtroom, and the news first broke that this judge had seen ICE agents in her courtroom and that she helped this illegal immigrant and his lawyer leave out of a back door. And of course there was a lot on both sides, a lot of outrage that she did this, and a lot of support saying, basically, how she's a hero. So she actually, her name is Hannah Dugan. She was arrested a couple weeks ago. She was arrested by the FBI, and the charges against her are that she obstructed a federal agency, which is a felony, and that she was helping to conceal a person, that she was helping them to avoid arrest, which is a misdemeanor. She faces 6 years in prison and a $350,000 fine. So I don't know exactly what led the defendant into her courtroom. I don't know if he found himself in other trouble and he was brought into court to, face something else, or if he was there because he was detained because he was in the country illegally. But he was in her courtroom for a pretrial appearance about a month ago, and the judge, became angry when she saw the ICE agents enter her courtroom, and she took the defendant and his lawyer into her chambers and led them out of a jury door, which is usually reserved for in custody defendants and deputies, etc. So she basically took this illegal and helped him escape, buying him time, basically. And of course, her actions sparked a lot of controversy. I think the ICE agents have a hard enough time as it is. They don't need activist judges hiding people. If he's here illegally, I think it would be most helpful to know, was he in front of her for like an immigration hearing? It doesn't sound like she's an immigration judge, though. So I guess the question is, what did he do that led him being in front of her to begin with, that, the ICE agents showed up and they were going to take him into custody themselves? Because now we have another case of, you have an illegal who committed a crime and he's being protected by judges. I understand that it's a sticky and sensitive subject. But if you're here illegally, I just if you're somewhere illegally, like, wouldn't you behave yourself, right? So that you don't get caught. It just is brazen that, we've got a slew of criminal illegals who are driving drunk, they're stealing things, they're raping, they're torturing, they're murdering. And then you've got a subset of people who get all up in arms because they're being arrested and they're being detained and eventually deported. Why do we want violent illegals here? I think it keeps coming back to, that's the question. Why do we have a subset of people who are defending violent criminals? I'm all for migrants coming, like the Afrikaners, who, they're being targeted, their farms are being taken away, their lives are being threatened. They requested asylum and they were granted asylum and brought here. Like, you're going about it the right way. You're not sneaking in, trying to fly under the radar or not. And that's what I don't understand. Why the outrage over criminals breaking laws, but then you've got, 50 people who have a skill that they can put to work immediately here, and were outraged because they were allowed in. Like, it does not make sense at all. And I know I'm kind of intertwining these, but I'm hoping that you see a parallel to these, that they're the same but different. That, we've got a judge who basically is, aiding and abetting a criminal, and then we've got people who are trying to come over here the right way with skills that are going to work, and they're being demonized. So I do think it'll be interesting to see what happens with this Judge Dugan. We already know that there was another judge who was actually housing an illegal immigrant, and they were caught, and he lost his law license, and he was either forced to resign or he was fired, for breaking a law, because he was housing an illegal immigrant, and he knew it. But there was pictures, like, he was flaunting it. So, I think it'll just, it'll be interesting what comes of Judge Dugan. Now, I did hear yesterday that there was a judge who did say that Trump can deport illegals on that Alien Enemy Act. So that's a win. And they're targeting the worst first. That's what they keep saying, the worst first. They're going after violent people. I keep seeing all these sob stories about how, there's families, or there's pregnant women and they're afraid to go to the doctor because they're afraid they're going to be deported. Well, I mean, I guess a couple things about that. Do something about it then. Why are you here? Or if you're here because you want a different, better life than your home country, like, file some papers then. Like, you don't need to live in fear. Go about being here legally. Get some papers. But I guess the bigger question is, are you violent? I would tend to think that a pregnant woman probably isn't violent. So you probably don't really have anything to worry about. It's the violent rapists and murderers and people who are driving around drunk without a driver's license. These are the people that we're trying to get off of our streets before more mothers and young girls are, just brutally violated and then killed. These are the people that we're trying to remove from the streets to make citizens safer. And I guess the other thing that I just don't get is why everybody kept quiet for the millions of people who poured in here over the last 4 years, literally starting on day one of the Biden administration. Nobody was concerned, but now all of a sudden that these, really a small group of the illegals are being looked at and targeted for removal. Now all of a sudden, all hell's breaking loose. I don't understand why such outrage over violent criminals and not outrage for victims. I guess that's what doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So let me know what you think. Did you hear about this Judge Dugan? Did you hear about her about a month ago when this happened? What do you think about the charges? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would have to assume if you're, listening to my channel, you probably are in agreement. But, I just, curious, I guess, what other people think, what people see and hear, and if there's something that needs to be considered that isn't. So that's all for today. Just like I said, a quick update, something a little bit different than what we've been talking about the last couple days, although there have been additional developments in Combs' case too, but I think I'll get on those tomorrow or something. We'll see. I don't want to focus on him every day, but not when there's so many other things going on. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.